So how do you like our little living room up here? I think it's pretty cool. We wanted to do something a little different for this day because in the past we've had me preach, which let's face it, we've probably had about enough of me for a while. We can take a break. But the kids and I had this idea of sharing stories, and me, I kind of have this idea to interview them about their camp experiences and how they've experienced God and things like this at camp. So I'm going to invite Kira Herman up first because I'm going to interview her first, interrogate or interview. So first of all, welcome. You nervous?
Yeah.
Don't be nervous. First of all, I know that most of them probably already know. Give your name and your grade.
I'm Kira Herman. I'm a freshman.
Freshman. That's okay. Okay, so what camp did you attend with us, or what camps have you been to?
Super Summer.
Super Summer. Can you explain what Super Summer is, what ages go, things like that?
High school, freshman, isn't it freshman?
Yeah, it's...
Freshmen through seniors, and then the junior high go to it. Yeah.
And so how many times have you been? Do you know how many times you've been?
3 times.
3 times, nice. I was thinking I was counting and I've been there almost 6 times. Yeah, I think it's better and better every year. What is one of your favorite memories of camp?
Well, my favorite memory is when we were up in our dorm and we were all just out there hanging out, and Kasha and Yaz ran off and they came back. Yaz was yelling at all of us to get up on our beds. We were freaking out, and Kasha was acting like she was going into labor, and she scared all of us. Like, we were all there singing. And after 5 minutes or so, after her panicking and everything, they just said it was a joke, and I've always remembered that since then.
That's so mean. Why would you do that? I didn't know. I honestly, one of my favorite memories of Kira, and I thought you were going to say this one, is how many of you know what a blob is on a lake? They have a rule at Super Summer, and I think we may be inspired this rule. They now have a weight ratio that you have to have because at that time, I don't know, you weighed like 95 pounds. I weighed like 300. So it was awesome. She went flying and she full rotations in the air. And so that's one of my favorite memories of camp. But here's the cool thing about camp is we don't just go to have fun. We have fun. We don't just go to blob and embarrass people. And it's always a blast. But so my next question is, how did you experience God at camp? Because we have a lot of times in chapel and worship. And how do you feel like God was there?
Well, one time we were all just sitting, and they had people where they stood up when they had something going on or they needed God in their life, and nobody was standing up, and I felt like after my grandma died, I didn't really feel like God was there, and then I went and nobody was standing up, and then I felt like somebody was pushing me to stand up, and that's when I felt that God was there.
Awesome. That's awesome. And here, I remember talking to you about that, and that was pretty impactful on your life. And, how did that change you from that point on? Like, how are you different now than you were before camp?
Well, when my grandma passed away, it was really hard, and after I went to the Super Summer, I came home and I realized that I'll see her again someday, and that no matter what you're going through or what people say, God's there and only God can judge you, and that no matter what, He's never going to leave your side. Then it shouldn't really matter what other people say, that as long as you have God, that's all you really need.
Thank you, Kira. That's awesome. And at this time, I'm going to invite Taylor to come on up. Taylor is really excited to be speaking in front of all of you. He's not nervous at all. Right? Let's take a deep breath together. Ready? None of these people are here. It's a joke. Okay, well, yes, but take them. So, name and grade, my friend.
I'm Taylor Rodriguez, and I'm a sophomore.
sophomore. What camp did you attend with us?
Super summer?
And was last year your first year?
No, that was my second.
2 years now. What's one of your favorite camp memories?
I can remember one night, the most recent year I went, which was last year. We were up in the dorms and it was almost time to go to bed, and somebody had brought out a soccer ball. And so like 10, 12 guys came out of the dorms and we started playing soccer in the hallway. And then at one point somebody kicked the ball and it hit the window and everybody scattered. And then everybody went to bed because everybody was too scared to come back out and keep playing.
It was at that point that some of us youth pastors ran to where the sound was and there were no kids, and we're like, something is very fishy here. But you would have thought that somebody had told them there was free cake somewhere the way they were all running. And so, yeah, Taylor has been coming to camp with us each time, and the first year was really great. So how do you feel like you experienced God at camp?
I felt like he made it very obvious that he was in my life. Like, things that didn't seem so obvious became more apparent. Like, I'd ask for a sign or something, and he'd just show it to me straight away. Whether it be, I don't know, somebody saying something that I'm having trouble with, or there was a time at lunch, me and Henry were sitting, and Henry was like, wow, I just wish some people would come sit with us. Not a minute later, 2 people came and sat with us. And I was like, hey, do you mind if we sit with you? And he's just been showing me signs.
That's very cool. Very cool. And I remember you had a pretty incredible experience that really, at least in my eyes, changed you. And so, can you kind of share about that experience and how that's changed you from that point on?
Well, the time I had gone before the second year of camp, I was basically lying. I found myself every day confused, not knowing what to do, but putting up a fake facade, as to say, like showing everybody I'm happy on the outside, but on the inside I'm just really scared and confused about what I'm supposed to do. And so, whenever I'd be around my friends, I'd be that happy-go-lucky friend, you know? I'd be very nice, I'd be funny, I'd crack jokes, but when I found myself alone, I found myself pondering that I'm sad, I don't know what to do, like, I'm confused, I have no idea what to do next. And then, when we had gone to camp, it just felt worse and worse, and it just kept building up, and this was maybe after half a year of it just building up. And then I think it was either the second or the third night, the pastor that was the speaker at the camp allowed anybody who felt like they needed God in their life, like he had everybody stand up, and he said, if you feel like you need God in your life, keep standing, while everybody else who either has God or wants Him to keep standing, and everybody else sit down. And I kept standing, and it was at that moment I realized that I needed God, and it's just changed me for the better ever since.
Okay, at this point I'm going to ask Katrina to come on up. What is your name, young miss, and your grade?
My name is Katrina Waters. I'm a sophomore.
You're a sophomore, are you sure? Is that your final answer?
We're sophomores.
Sophomores. What camps have you attended with us?
I've been to Super Summer. Yeah.
You've been to Super Summer. Okay, do you know how many times? Almost every year that we've
Yeah.
gone.
Not my
No? Couple times. Anyway, what's one of your favorite memories of camp?
I have a few, but one of my favorites is like last year when I went, I still had this like heart issue. And so me and Isaac did Jacob's Ladder, and he was like, let's go! And he was like so pumped. And I was like, I can barely do it. And Jacob's Ladder is like, it's a ladder and a full-size ladder, and the bottom 2 rungs are close, and then they get farther and farther apart as you go up. And I was like, I don't know, and I was like, you just go. And he was such a champ. He was helping me the whole time. But then I got down, and my heart was just like, I don't know what you're doing. Like, don't do this ever again. And so I went back to my dorm. We had like 3 hours of free time still, and I slept the entire time. And then I went back out, and Isaac's like, did you die? I'm like, no, almost.
yeah, we get to do a lot of different things. There's a pinnacle of faith, there's Jacob's ladder, a lot of high up things that really test your faith and test your bravery. And I know that he'd probably kill me if I told you guys the story, but Henry Penner, poor fella, got halfway up the pinnacle of faith and was there for 30 minutes. Could not move. Don't tell him I was the one who told you that, but...
Well, it was 25 minutes.
Yeah, poor guy. He did a good job though. The guy holding the rope literally had to pull him off, so he would just swing down gently. But anyway, how did you experience God?
Well, like everything that we did, God was totally there. But the number one thing that stuck out to me was last year I was like really kind of confused, kind of like Taylor. I was just like, what does God even want me to do? Because I didn't really know. Like I was a freshman, I just wanted to know what was going on, what I wanted to do. And so we were in the worship, which the band was really cool and it was really good. And the drummer, which I'm a drummer too, so he was one of Jesse's friends. And so it was pretty cool. And then we were standing there and I was just like, God, I don't know what you want me to do. And I'm totally confused, so just kind of give me a sign or something. And so then, like he just spoke to my heart and said, if you would trust in me, you would have this. And by this, I knew he meant the band being there, playing, singing to just glorify him. And I just knew that that was what I wanted to do.
Yeah, it was really awesome because Katrina said, hey, I think God is calling me to be on the worship team at church. And which takes a lot of guts to say that, you know, even for someone my age, you know, to say that God is calling you to do anything, that's a big deal. But what which is really funny, is we had a worship committee meeting, about a month before that, and her name came up saying, hey, maybe we should ask Katrina to sing on worship team. And then she came to me, and she said, I think God is calling me to be on worship team. And it was just like, God, okay, well, we're going to do what you want to do, because you obviously know what you're doing. And so how has camp had a lasting impact? How have you changed since then?
Well, obviously it changed because I sing more now. But they give us like booklets and stuff to help people like afterwards, and that really helped me because I still struggle even now, like just keeping your faith alive and there. And so it really helped me, and just singing every week gives me a stable ground to remind me that God's still there.
You can stay right there. And then something that I wanted to do, and thank you all you students for sharing with us. I know that everyone is super blessed by it. So what we're going to do is I was actually going to switch with Katrina, and I'm going to have Katrina interview me and another adult, and we're going to share about how camp is still impacting our life today, and how we, in those times, we even remember, I know, we're almost done, I promise. I know that she is doing how most of you feel inside her. I understand. We're all tired, but, so I'm going to hand this over to Katrina, and she's going to interview me and another adult, so.
Name and grade.
I am, well, I can do this. My name's Jesse, and I'm in, math. I'm in seminary. That's my grade.
What was your life like before camp?
My life like before camp. You know, it's really funny. Taylor and I have a very similar story. I was the class clown through, as you can probably imagine. You know, I was the class clown through most of school, and in junior high, I really got to this point where I hit a serious depression in my life, but no one would have known. Just like you, Taylor, no one would have known that I was in this deep, deep depression. And you know, with my parents having been divorced and like remarriages and things like this, I was starting to be really affected by that in 7th grade, and I started down this really dark path of you know, just getting into sin in a way that I was not pleased with, and I ended up getting to this point where I had attempted suicide at the end of 7th grade, and it did not work. You know, I have not told a lot of people that, but it's vital to my story. where it didn't work, it didn't end up happening, and I just said, oh my God, if I can't even see this through, like what am I worth? You know, why am I even here? People only like me because I can crack a joke. And I just kept praying, my God, show me what to do. I don't know, I'm not where I'm at. The confusion that you guys talk about is huge. And I ended up going to camp, and that's when everything changed. Everything changed. I don't know, am I moving on to the second question?
How did you experience God at camp?
So I went to, I grew up in a Quaker church, so we went to a Quaker camp and it's not like, you know, you can't dance or anything like that. It's not super hardcore Quaker, but I went to a camp when I was in 9th grade, was when things really started to turn around, and I went to camp there, and I met people. I had started going to a new church, and I had, one night we were in our dorms, and I was sitting there with one of my friends, and I was kind of expressing my frustrations and my depression, and finally he said, you need God. I'm like, well, duh, I know I need God. I'm here at camp, aren't I? He's like, no, you can be at camp and not accept God. You can be here at camp and not want God. And he's like, do you want God? And at that point, he prayed with me, and throughout that whole camp experience, you know, things became clear to me, and people surrounded me with love at camp, and I was able to share those struggles that I would never have in a million years shared with anybody, and I was shown love in those times at camp.
What was life like after your encounter with God?
I like this question because this is where things really became interesting for me, because after that time at camp, I felt this, I don't know if you've ever heard somebody a tug on your heart. I felt this tug on my heart that it's very, very possible that I need to be in ministry somehow. And camp made that very, very clear that somewhere down the line, I wanted to be in ministry full time. I wanted to be either a worship leader or, you know, a pastor. At that time, a pastor was like, no way, I'm not doing that. But because I like music, I'll be a worship leader. And throughout my life, it was that moment that I look back on, and I look back and go, that's where I received my call to be a pastor, but I didn't really know it yet. I didn't really know that this is where I would end up. I didn't know that these were the people I'd end up being with and helping to lead. And so what camp did for me is it completely and totally transformed me. But it wasn't camp itself, it was God working in me at camp. And that was the very special thing.
Thank you. Hi, name and grade. I'm Kasha and I'm in no grade. What was your life like before camp?
Okay, before camp, like hardly anybody knows this except for like maybe Bree and Debbie, and Jesse. But before camp, I like grew up not in a hard home, but kind of a hard home. It was all about like my mom did drugs. My dad was just not there, and I grew up with my Grammy, who was awesome, but you know, she's my Grammy, and I could sneak around her. And I got into the party scene, and when I was in 8th grade, which seems so young now to me, and I think the low in my life was when I did cocaine, and out of that party scene came consequences that not even I had a choice over, and I don't need to get into that, but I just stooped to this rock bottom, and even though I was at rock bottom, I kept digging myself a deeper and deeper rock bottom, and yeah, that was my life before.
How did you experience God at camp?
Well, I went to CIY in Missouri, and I first have to tell you guys the funny story of how like God is kind of just funny.
Before I went, there was this girl and this guy liked me, and he broke up with this girl for me. And we both went to camp, and so we get there, and I see she's there, and I'm like, oh gosh, why? And I'm not a Christian or anything, and so they're saying roommates. And I'm like, God, please not her. If you're there, please not her. Don't room me with her. And they're like, Kasha and, we'll say her name was Emily. Emily are rooming together. And I was like, oh, I'm going to get jumped. And so we get in the room, and she like comes and she's like, just so you know, I'm not mad at you anymore. But it's just kind of funny because that's the sense of humor that God has to have. So I got there, and I like, it's been, I mean, this was in 2004, so, or 5, this was a long time ago, and so, I can't remember, like, exactly what happened, but I remember going forward with my 2 friends, her and another girl, and we dedicated our life to Christ, and I remember the song, it was a Hillsong song, and so, but that's, yeah.
What was your life like after your encounter with God?
My life was totally different. And here's what I want you guys to know. Yes, you can encounter God at camp, but everything changes once you get home. And yes, it's going to be different, but here's the thing. Like, everybody talks about this camp high and everything's so awesome after camp, but you will hit lows and stuff, and that's when your faith is really tested. You're in a relationship with God, and He doesn't ever go away from you. And that's the truth I've learned, that He's never distant from us, we're distant from Him. And after camp, I had to make serious changes in my life. I remember I went from being a popular girl to sitting by myself at lunch because that's what it took for me to not go back to my old life. And I'm not saying judge your old friends or anything like that, because none of us can boast about being Christians or anything, because we've all fallen short, but it takes real change and a real relationship with God to really change. And I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for me and through Jesus. I don't do anything. It's all Jesus, but you have to have a relationship. You can't have a relationship with someone and expect them to do all the work. You have to put in equal changes in that relationship. It's just like a friendship. Would you want to be friends with someone who didn't talk to you? You have to also be in equal partnership with that person, even though God does everything, and we are not good unless it's through Him. But you have to make those changes to make your faith last. I don't know. That was my mini sermon, I guess.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you everyone for listening to our stories. I thought that was very appropriate. And here's the reason that I wanted to do this, is because a lot of people, when we get into camp fundraising time and, we're signing paperwork, we're gathering things, sometimes we can kind of lose focus of why we're doing what we're doing and why we take kids to camp. And it is for exactly what you've heard. We all have good memories, fun memories of funny things, but look at how kids have been impacted. I guarantee you, I could put almost every single student up here, and they would tell you how they were impacted by camp. And even Kasha and I, if it weren't for camp, I probably wouldn't be a pastor. If it weren't for camp, Kasha and I probably wouldn't have even met. And so it's a really big deal. And so my whole point for this is that here we're gonna head into we're gonna close it with a song, and we're gonna head in to lunch and the cake auction. And so when you are supporting our youth financially for camp, when you're giving, you're not just giving for them to ride on a bus, go up there and play some games. You are giving to an opportunity for them to meet God and encounter Him in a life-changing way. And so when you give, I just want everyone to understand that when you give, that's what you're giving to. You're giving to a ministry. And not just that, because they come home changed, and then guess what they do when they come home? Then they go out into our town, they go back to school, having been changed. This is how we spread the gospel. This is how we go into the world, is we train our young ones up in the way of the Lord, and then they go out and they live that life in the same way, preach the gospel. So we're going to close with a song. Lord, we thank you so much for this time. God, I thank you so much for these youth. They are so inspiring, God, and they can teach us so much about a relationship with you. And I just pray, God, that today as we gather for a meal together and to eat ridiculous amounts of cake, I just pray, Lord, that we're glorifying to you. God, that we surround these youth with love and compassion and support. And Lord, I ask that you bless the food that we're about to receive. Help it nourish our bodies. We ask this in your name. Amen. Thank you very much. Come join us for potluck.